Welcome everyone to another episode of The Square. My name is Maxine Higgins, and as you can see, I've got a whole lot of people with me today, and I'm so excited because this month we're going to be talking all about marriages, the good, the bad, the ugly, no matter where you fall in line, whether you're single, whether you're engaged or married. This is something that's going to be really great for you to listen to, and I'm so excited to introduce some of my friends. First, I want to introduce this handsome man sitting next to me.
Thank you. My name is Phil. I'm the husband. Hello, guys.
In his debut, not the last time that you'll see him though. And I just kind of want to go around to introduce everybody else. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, let us know like how long you've been married, how long you were dating before you got married, and tell us where you're from.
My name is Earl Williams, and this is my beautiful wife.
Oh, Rosa.
We've been married for 20 years, and we were dating for 2 years.
Wow. And where are you guys from?
I'm from Cambridge, Massachusetts.
I was born in Puerto Rico, but I grew up in Lawrence, Massachusetts.
Very nice.
I'm Frankie Quinones, and this is my wife, Michelle. And we've been married 6.5 years. We dated for 1 year. We're both from North New Jersey, actually.
I'm Zawadi Murray. This is my wife, Camille. We've been married for 4 years now, and before that, we were dating for 4.5, 5 years. I'm originally from New York.
I'm from Virginia.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And you want to, do you
What?
know how long?
Oh my goodness, it's complicated, ain't it?
We dated for 5 years throughout college. So we
Right.
met freshman year of college, and then we broke up for 5 years. And then we got back together as adults, smarter, wiser.
Indeed.
And then dated for less than a year before we got engaged, I think.
That was a year.
It was a year. So a year. So yeah. And then we've been married for a little over a year now.
Yep.
So that's us. And I'm from Jersey. And
I'm from Accokeek, Maryland.
Accokeek, Maryland. We love it. Well, I love hearing about the starts of things and the beginnings of things. This is what we do on SWAG all the time. So I would just love to hear how you guys met each other, what you thought of each other when you first saw each other. What was the initial attraction? What was like the dating stages like for you guys?
We first met at our old previous church. I was early for Bible study, and Frankie thought that he was late for Bible study. So I was just there reading a book, and he was like rushing up the stairs to get inside. And I like stopped him like, hey, where are you running? Like, no one's there. Like, you're so early. And that's literally how we first met.
Yeah.
On my end, there was no attraction. There was no attraction for me, at least, like real pure attraction, I guess. For like 2-3 years.
I still don't think she's telling the whole story. I'll give it that. Me, regarding attraction, to be honest, what attracted me was the fact that she was reading a book. You know, we have a big age gap. You know, I'm 15 years older than her. And I don't know, there was just something about seeing a young woman waiting for church, reading a book. And yeah, there was nothing like crazy, like, oh my God, I just met my wife type of moment. But definitely that was an attraction.
Yeah. Awesome. And what was it like when you guys, I guess, first started to decide dating? What was that process like?
So we were friends probably for about
3-ish years.
Yeah, about 3.5 years we were friends. In that time, we did have like a moment of like, we kissed, right? And then we were like, all right, whatever. I think I thought it could become more while she was like, it was just a kiss and that's it. We're gonna move on. So we ended up becoming friends for about 3.5 years. And in that time, I experienced her go through different relationships.
Oof.
Yeah, so that was fun for me. And yeah, no, but at the same time, I think it helped me learn how to be a real friend and put what I wanted aside.
Yeah.
And I think it helped her appreciate a side of me that she probably wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Awesome. How about you guys, Zawadi and Camille?
So we met in college. I was running the Christian Fellowship Club. We had an event We were waiting to leave the event, and she walked into the lobby.
Mhm.
She was really stressed. I looked at her. I was like, "What's wrong?" And then, you know, the rest is history. We were like inseparable after
Yep.
that. Yeah.
That's really kind of how it happened, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I was stressed that day. I was on the track team. I had an asthma attack. I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
want to go to this event, and then I went anyway because my friends were like, "Just go." And I remember just standing there, and like I really was stressed. I was just stressed out, and he just like walked up to me and was like, "Hey, what's wrong? Why are you stressed?" And I was like, And then we just started talking.
She smiled. I was like, her smile is amazing. And that was it.
And then we were together for like the rest of that night, and people thought that we were like best friends already. I was like, no, I just met him like an hour ago.
That's so cute. How about you guys, Earl and Rosa?
So you have to remember, like, this was all before Jesus' day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we met at the club. We met at the Hong Kong in Cambridge. Came up to me, and I was at Boston College at the time doing my graduate degree. And he came on really strong, and I just wasn't feeling him at all. I was just like, he's all right, like, whatever, we can dance. But I kept going to the same club, and he was still there. And he kept asking me why I wasn't calling him. So one day I decided to call him, tell him that I wasn't going to call him because it was just getting awkward.
Oh, the call to tell you won't call.
It was getting awkward, right? Because he would be like, hey, you know, trying to be suave and play it like, and I was just like, no, like I'm good. So I called him to tell him I wasn't going to call. And then we spent 4 hours on the phone just talking.
Wow.
And so there was no attraction there for me initially. And then he came and came for dinner once, and then he never left.
A lot of that's kind of true. Frankie, we know there was an attraction there, right? But then, no, I mean, it really did happen just like that. Like I've seen her, and I was definitely attracted to her the first time I seen her. I was just like, I'm gonna get with her. Like, we're gonna be together. And at that time, I was just trying to talk to everyone. I was just like, just free. Wasn't in any relationship. But when I seen her, I was just like, hold up. And then she kept, every time I seen her, I would mess with her and be like, oh yeah, you're gonna call me, right? And she would be like, yeah. I'm like, all right. She did. She called me to literally say, I'm calling to let you know the reason why I haven't called you. I was like, but you're calling me? Yeah, then it went from there.
I can tell it how I remember.
Okay.
I remember the first time I saw you was in the caf in Stetson East, and you was at the fountain getting some juice. And I thought to myself, why is she drinking juice? You know, like, I don't know, I don't drink juice. But she was beautiful. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna try to have to holler at her, you know? And then I saw her in the library one time, and I had met this girl like 2 times before that, and she did not remember me or who I was or anything. And I'm just like, dang, like, I already met you, you know? And we got introduced again, and then I think at that point it stuck, right?
Because he yelled at me. He yelled at me in the library. He's like, I already met you. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, you know, and I felt horrible. So I never forgot him because, like, you yelled at me.
Because I yelled at you?
In the library.
Well, it was worth it.
We were in the caf one day, and I think he walked by and just like waved at me, and I just waved at him. And my roommate was like, who's that? He's so cute. And I was like, what? And I looked at him, I was like, oh my gosh, he's cute. Like, how did I not see this before? But I think like a week later, I saw him in the caf sitting by himself, and I attempted to have a conversation with him, which was like horrific.
I was nervous, man. I was looking at ESPN. I was coming straight from practice. It was like, I had been up since like 4:30.
It was terrible. I sat down next to him, and I'm like trying to have a conversation, like, hey, like, you know, he didn't look over at me once. He stayed looking at the TV the entire time up like this. And then when I asked a question, he would just be like, because he had a very thick drawl. And I was like, what are you saying? And he just wouldn't look at me. So I sat there for like maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that was a mistake. You know, maybe I thought he kind of thought I was cute or something, but I guess not. He wasn't interested. And before I made it back to my dorm, he had already sent me a message on Facebook.
On Facebook at that point.
On Facebook.
Yeah.
And was like, "Hi, beautiful. I had just such an
I had to be
incredible
smooth
morning
with
with you," and
Yeah.
all these eloquent words. I was like, "Who is this? This is not all these words he's putting in there."
Kept her guessing.
Kept me guessing. Yeah, and then we hung out, I think, for the first time. And same thing, he never left after that.
Yeah.
Just always
Except for
there.
those 5 years.
Except for the 5 years that we don't talk about. Awesome. So I would love to hear kind of your decision process. Like, how was it while you guys were dating? What made it click that, man, this is the person I want to get married to?
So when I first met Camille, I knew there was something special about her, and I was like, I stuck close. But I had been praying about, I guess, who I was supposed to be with, because when you're in college, you run by a whole lot of different people, and none of that was working out. So I was like, all right, God, I'm gonna focus on you. And so he gave me 1 Corinthians 13 as like the characteristics of what my wife is gonna have. And so I want to say about 2 months in, God told me, like, all right, this is the woman. Like compare her characteristics to what love is supposed to be. And that's when it clicked for me. And then I told her, and she ran from me.
It did not click.
Like, she literally ran from me, because I had a moment where, when I realized, like, this is her, this is it, I broke down and I was in tears.
I was like, he's crying. Something's wrong with him.
And this is 2 months in?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I was like, oh.
But like, everybody else around me knew it. Like, there was this one girl, she was like, oh, I know that face. That's the face that you found the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And she was like, I gotta go.
I don't know. And I literally ran. I ran, for real. Like, didn't walk.
Well, you were a track star, so.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So when did it click for you, Camille?
I think in that moment, I was just afraid. But like, the connection that we had, like, from the first day that we met, like, I knew that there was something special about him. I think just that whole interaction just threw me off. But like, literally, maybe like that same night we ended up talking. And I don't know, it wasn't necessarily like a moment for me where it just like clicked. I kind of just continued to go with the flow, and then eventually I was like, I want to get married. And he had already said that before, so it was nothing new. So that's the story.
How about you guys, Earl and Rosa?
Well, I like to be transparent. So for me, when Rosa came and we found out she was pregnant, for me, that was, in my head, I was just like, I'm going to be with her anyway. But that kind of pushed the initiative, I would say.
Yeah.
Because I already had a son, and that relationship didn't work. And I always looked at my dad as being my role model. He's been with my mom for about 52 years. So they've been married for 52 years. So for me, it was just like, I'm not having a bunch of kids out of wedlock. Like, that's just something that I didn't want to do. And I just really like pictured myself like 10 years, 20 years. Is this a person I could see myself with? And we had a conversation, and I told her I wanted to marry her. She agreed, and we've been together ever since. That's my interpretation. I will give you that.
Well, I think that's it. You know, I was pregnant, and he had to tell my dad, and my dad was, he was like, you don't have to marry her, but you will take care of this baby. And so he said to my dad, I actually want to marry her. And so I was like, oh, you do. And so we decided to, and so I just have to, so we've never had a wedding.
Oh, wow.
Or like did the honeymoon, or we did everything. You know, there's something to be said about God being a God of order. And when you don't do things in the order which God puts things in for a reason, at the time we didn't know, we were just sort of going with what was happening. Things are just like explosive, and you're just sort of grabbing at straws. And I think that was the case for us. And so I was 6 months pregnant. We woke up one day and he was like, "You want to go get married today?" And I said, "Sure." And I was so swollen from pregnancy. It was November. My feet were so swollen. I had to wear flip-flops to the courthouse. And we went and in a copy room, and I said, "I do." And he said, "I do." And then I was feeling sick because I was pregnant. And then we had hot dogs afterwards. It's our wedding day.
Yeah, sounds like a good day.
I guess in retrospect, it is. I mean, I guess we didn't have a wedding, but we somehow created a marriage out of all of that. But if it wasn't for Jesus, it just this would not happen. So.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. How about you guys, Frankie and Michelle?
I found myself really like Zawadi pouring myself out way earlier than she was ready for it. Mm-hmm. And I kind of got a revelation on that like God kind of told me like, "Hey, stop pouring yourself out. I want you to imagine a bucket full of water and with a little hole on the bottom. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to trickle your love on her and just be consistent. Keep that going." And that's what I did, and it worked, right? So, that was what I resonated with Zawadi. And then with Earl, you mentioned that you just knew that you didn't want to break that structure that you saw from your parents, right? So I didn't see that from my parents, but I knew that what I wanted to work towards was that kind of a structure, to build a family and for it to be long-term and to not go around and have a lot of children. And the fact that I still didn't have any children, she didn't have any children, that was a big component of me saying like, all right, like this is really possible. We could do this the right way. You know what I mean? And that was really important for me.
I guess when it clicked for me, I was actually dating another guy. Oh my God, my story is amazing. I was dating another guy, and I was actually out to dinner with Frankie. Like I was like in the middle of like wanting to like break up with this guy and stuff. And at that point, Frankie was like my best friend now.
Which was torturous for me. But yeah.
So we were sitting, we were at Taub's Diner actually, right? We were sitting across from each other, and he's like talking to me, and then he says, I don't know why he said this. Like I don't know the conversation, but I just remember these words that he was like, "Angel's never gonna love you the way I love you." And I literally melted into my chair. And
that's a bachata song.
And yeah, that's when I knew, like, oh my God, like I love this guy. So literally days later, I broke up with this guy. Maybe days later, I don't know when. But then like our conversation changed where we knew that now us dating was gonna lead to us getting married. Like it was just a matter of getting a ring, talking with our parents. But yeah, we literally went into dating each other to get married. Like we just knew like, all right, this is it.
Yeah. So it's just a moment of knowing.
Yeah.
And side note really quick, the fact that she was in that relationship and she knew how I felt, and we would go and have like, we were foodies, so we would go to all diners and restaurants and stuff like that. And the fact, I used to talk reckless sometimes like that part, like saying that to her, you know what I mean? But she would never cross the boundaries. And I think that like really earned my respect. Yeah. You know what I mean? The fact that we could be out, we could be eating, and she would never cross that boundary. And that to me gave me a lot of confidence in her character and the kind of woman.
Wow. Yeah. And a lot of times with character, the only thing that tells that is time. Like literally time. So what was the decision process like?
For me, I'm not gonna lie, I was not trying to get married, y'all. It was like, what's that thing you told me that summer? Ella pa' cuando?
Oh my goodness. El anillo pa' cuando?
Yeah.
J-Lo song.
She said, you gonna marry me? I said, you know, and I thought about it. I said, you know what? Could I really see myself, you know, somebody else with her? You know, I'm looking back 10 years later, 5 years later. I said, hell no, you know, like I'm gonna marry her. So we can end up getting married. You know, I wasn't ready to get married. I thought it was, what did I say? Like, I said like another year.
No,
What did I say?
it was gonna be another 3 years.
Oh, well, see, that wasn't gonna work. But I am so glad I did it. I ain't not gonna lie. It was a great decision.
Yeah, I think for us, so, you know, because we dated so young too, I guess like Zawadi and Camille, and I guess Earl and Rosa too, you guys were fairly young. I don't know that I was thinking ever about marriage in college, like 18, 19, 20. It wasn't, I mean, I thought like this is the guy I'm going to be with forever, but I don't think I was thinking about marriage in any capacity. But I think when we broke up during that time, you know, we both went off and lived separate lives. We both had, you know, different relationships, but in the back of my mind, it was always that nagging, like, what about Phil? Like, what about Phil? And it was really destructive in my relationships, even though like we didn't have conversation. We weren't connecting during that time. I think like right after we broke up for first few months, we still kept in touch. But then there was like an abrupt, like, we're just not talking to each other. But I still could not like move forward from the idea of like, my life is supposed to be with him somehow. And so it was really hard for the next 4 years or so. It's like, you know, trusting, and I got saved in the middle of the process, which also kind of just changed everything in my mind. And so I really thought like, okay, God is going to do this. Like, you know, I'm saved. I'm his child. He knows my heart's desire. Like, and then like year after year would pass and like nothing, didn't hear from him. And then eventually one day he came back and it was a really interesting time because one of the relationships I had prior was so messed up that my brain was all over the place when he came back. And I was actually very fearful to start talking to him even. Like my heart was just feeling so vulnerable and I was so scared that I actually cut it off.
Yeah, she cut me off.
I did.
I was like, all right, well, I thought I was doing all right. She said, this ain't working.
I mean, there was so much emotion to about reunited. This is the thing that I have wanted for the last 5 years. It's like all like, you know, back of my mind. And then it came and I was like, oh no, I can't handle this. Like, no, you know? And so I totally like shut down for like 2 months and was like, hey, this is a mistake. Like, I don't think we should talk. Now, mind you, we hadn't even seen each other yet. It had been 5 years since we physically saw each other.
Yeah.
But I was just like, can't do it. Nope. Story's done and it's closed. And I was just going to be by myself and not know. But, you know, thank God, like literally God, he kind of kept pressing me and was like, did I tell you to do that? And I was really convicted because I realized, you know, the Bible does say to guard your heart, but it's also to entrust it to God. And I was guarding it so much that I actually wasn't like leaving any room for God to tell me what he wanted to. I was trying to protect myself and not let God protect me. And so, you know, I was like, ooh, I made a mistake. And I was so worried that he was like not gonna respond at all. And but then, you know, I sent him a message and I was like, hey, and he's like, hey, when are we going to lunch? Like immediately. It was like nothing. And then we met up and it just was like no time had passed at all. It was insane. Got to know each other for 6 months before dating, before being like, all right, we're gonna do this again. But then once we did do it again, I'm like, I'm about to be 30 years old. So what are you doing here? Like, I don't have time to just hang out. You know who I am. You were with me for 5 years. You know the woman I am now. You know the family. Like, you know what's going on. What decisions do you have to make still, you know? And then, J-Lo inspired me. She came out with her song, El Anillo Pa' Cuando. When am I getting my ring, though? And I was like, I'm going to get brave here because as much as I love this man and never stopped loving him, I knew that I wanted to be married, and I knew that I didn't want to continue like a long distance relationship. And I had learned and grown enough to value myself to say like, no, what I need out of this is security. What I need out of this is your commitment. And I was vocal about it. And I'm so glad I was too, because he was like talking about, I'm proposing in like 2 years. I was like, do you know how long it takes to plan a wedding? That means we're going to be long distance for another 3 years if you're proposing in 2. So everything moved up.
Good job. Sometimes you need that little.
Depending on how you grew up and what kind of messages you received around marriage, some of us could be really hesitant walking into the process. Some of us have been dreaming about it forever, and you're excited about it. But I think the one thing that is central to anybody that you talk about, that marriage is a gift. But there are difficult moments. There are challenges that come up within the marriages, and it's important that we don't go in kind of thinking everything is going to be 100% and perfect all the time. So I would love to just hear a little bit about your stories and maybe some challenges that you've had. And if there's anything you wish you would have known even before you started dating, maybe while you were still single or before you got married, that you think might have helped with that particular challenge as you got there.
Something I would have wished that I knew before getting married is definitely the fact that just because I think everything is okay doesn't mean everything is okay. So like our first couple of years, I thought we were good. Remember, Phil, you mentioned that's how I felt. Yeah, it ain't perfect, but we good. And it wasn't good. And it took us visiting some friends, and I guess Michelle had a moment where she like confided in this friend, and this friend was about it. She sat us down at the table and was like, "No, we talk about this right now," and put everything on the table. And I was like, I felt like ambushed. I was like, "What the heck?" I was like, "Why you ain't never tell me this? Like, I thought we were good." But yeah, so I definitely, and that leads into what our biggest challenge is communication. Yeah, it was. Yeah, like understanding that communication is a beast. Like you can never be like it's always evolving. We're always changing. We're always growing. So we can't ever get to a point where like, oh no, I'm good. I know her by now. Like we should always be learning more and more about each other, because as we grow, we want to make sure that communication is really like putting us in a good position to know what's going on and how we could be the best spouse we could be.
Yeah.
I wish we would have had like a lot of the resources that we have now, and even like being a part of Hillsong, they have so many resources for like people dating and couples that are engaged, about to get married, and we didn't have that. And I think that if we would have, I would not have changed my mind. I still would have wanted to marry him. I know that for like, there's no doubt about that, but it would have made those two like first years a lot easier.
Yeah. It's so huge, having the right resources and community. I know we benefited a lot from those classes, and we took them too at Hillsong, and just kind of always communicating and talking. And we have gotten a lot better. But for sure, if you look at us when we were in college, we used to have horrible arguments, just terrible. And I think for both of us, I think we've learned a much better way to communicate with one another. But it wasn't like, oh, out of nowhere. It's like, no, we read the books. We tried to put some stuff in practice. We took some classes. It didn't come like just naturally, like,
How we didn't read any books.
We should have.
No, for sure. I mean, I think there's so much I want to say. I don't even know where to start, because I think, well, I'll start with this. I think the number one thing I wish I had known when I got married was Jesus, because so you bring these two really imperfect people who don't know the Lord into this space. You throw in a kid, you say marriage, you mix it up, and you have like sort of this vision of what marriage is supposed to look like, and it doesn't look like that at all. And so now you're expecting this person to love you a certain way that he has no capacity to, because he's imperfect too, right? And so when I came to faith and I received love that was, between the perfect love of Christ and me, and I saw myself through his eyes, was I able to accept, one, myself as imperfect, and two, him as this imperfect being that's trying to make a life together. And we didn't, when I came to faith, he hadn't come to faith. So there was sort of that being unequally yoked for a while. And so I prayed for him a ton. And then I was trying to sort of force feed the word to him. And I remember, God sort of impressing on my heart that, you do the praying, I do the saving. And just a little bit later, he came to faith. And so didn't mean that it was perfect after that. But when you're able to receive perfect love from a different source, you allow another person to be imperfect. And I think that's what's important in a marriage, is that he's not going to love me right, because he doesn't know that love. But he's coming close now that he knows the love of God, because he knows what love is and what it looks like and what sacrificial love is. And so we're sort of like hitting our stride the first sort of, I would say 10 years, y'all. I'm sorry. Really hard. But y'all might have a good start because you know Jesus now. But like the first few years was really, really difficult. One, we struggled financially. Two, we didn't know the Lord. Three, there was no trust in our marriage. And when I tell you by the grace of God that we are here, it's because he made it happen and he made it so. And he told me to stay here. And when you see people, you see those really, and I'll end with this and I'll let you go because I can keep going. But when you see sort of folks that are like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years into their marriage, you look at them and you're like, what is the recipe? And you're like, forgiveness, like real forgiveness, not just forgiveness, like, yeah, I forgive you and you move on. It's like forgiveness not to bring that thing back up. It's a forgiveness that comes as close to God's forgiveness as you can make it be, because you can't move forward from a situation unless you tell yourself, I have forgiven for that and we need to move on. And it's literal, deliberate, intentional choices every day that you make so that you can make it work.
Ooh, what a word.
Yes.
You better preach.
I'm supposed to follow up after that.
I tell you, like.
I think for me, it was just like I didn't know what love was. I didn't know how to love myself. And, I think to the point what Rosa was saying, like once I started realizing what true love was, it was easy for me to know how to love my wife. I mean, Jesus said, love your wife like I love the church, right? And for me, it was, what does that mean? I'm like, I know he loved the church, like, because this is just him. Like, how am I supposed to love my wife like this? And once I started understanding that a little bit better, it was easy for me to kind of deal with myself, like, and not be so selfish and just worry about my own feelings. It was just something that I was just trying to escape from, right? So I would act a certain way and I would be a certain way because I was just so fearful of receiving the love she was giving to me because I didn't feel as though I was worthy of that, because I felt like I've never received that. And then once I started building that relationship with God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and everything just started just mixing up, and it was just like a wonderful feeling. I was like, all right, I got this now. I can do this. I'm gonna move on with this. And it is a roller coaster ride. Marriage is a roller coaster ride. Getting to know someone, spending that much. I mean, think about it. We're in a pandemic, so where are we going? If we don't like each other now, we'll never like each other, right?
Right.
And I think that for us has been like our testimony. Like we've been able to really love each other even more during this time, get to know each other even more, pray together more, just have conversations.
So what, Camille, do you want to add to that?
I definitely I understand the forgiveness thing, because that's definitely a big component. But for me, the thing that I wish I knew was how important us working as a unit, one, and then being in agreement. And those two things are kind of one and the same. I was excited to marry her. I proposed, but I had like a 2-year run-up planned out for the wedding because I was fresh out of college. I had a job that the funding ran out, so they stopped paying me for work that I had already done. Money was tight. And we were trying to plan this wedding that we could barely afford our own bills. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to figure out how we're going to get married. And we turned our nose up at the, eloping. And then we look back on it and be like, I probably should have eloped. But
we didn't know you then.
No, but really, because after we got married, like stuff that I had been trying to do, business ventures that I was working on, like all of that just started rolling. And then whenever we decided on something, it just happened. Like, we got married, and then after we got married, our bills that we were behind on were paid up. After we got married, we didn't have degrees. We applied to go to school at the last minute. After the deadlines had passed, we both got accepted. Even down to the pandemic recently, we decided we were going to move down to Virginia, and both of our jobs were tight. I was getting pressure at my job. She was working, I don't know, 6-7 days a week, long hours. And we both got interviews on the same day. It's the only job offers we got, same interviews on the same day, and then we both got
within an hour from each other.
Right.
So it was just like, it was like perfect.
And now we've been able to work from home. Like,
Nice.
when we move and make decisions together and come to agreement, stuff just works.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I had known that, because stuff would have worked a lot sooner.
So good.
One thing I wish I'd have known before we got married was how good it would be. Because for me, growing up, my parents, they divorced. Most of the people in my family divorced, so all you kind of hear about is, oh man, you getting married? Oh man, you don't want to do that, not yet. But all of a sudden, man, you're in this thing, and like y'all said, the teamwork thing, man, you accomplish so much more. This year has been great, for us. Even our first year of marriage, people say, it's a hard one. For us, man, it was great. Yeah, and that's one thing I wish I would know. I wouldn't have been as afraid to jump out there as I was
With me.
with her. Yeah.
Not with anybody. With
Yeah.
me.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's clear.
That's good.
I had to put that in there,
That's what Phil meant. That's what he meant.
Yeah, indeed.
I didn't necessarily see from like being a little kid healthy examples of what a marriage would look like. And I think that's actually part of the reason why, in college, I wasn't necessarily thinking about marriage in any capacity, because I just didn't see it. And honestly, I thought I didn't want to get married up until I got saved. And then all of a sudden I'm understanding that marriage is not what culture was making it out to be. That there was a gift that in getting married, I was going to be able to see another side of God's love. And so that made it something that I wanted to know. But I still wasn't about to just like go and marry anybody. So I wasn't in a rush necessarily in that capacity. I knew it was him, but it was a challenge because of exactly what he said. So he's coming in with this mindset of marriage is a bad thing, saved for a few years, and like, no, marriage is a gift. It's beautiful. So now we're like kind of going back and forth on this idea of what marriage is. And I think I felt very protective over what it should look like and what it should be. And so probably I pushed a lot in the beginning, but it worked.
It did.
It was good because I wanted to set these like really firm foundations, and I think both of us got a chance to really know each other too.
Yeah.
So we asked tough questions like right away. And I think that was really helpful. And I think a challenge within the actual marriage was just learning to surrender fully, because I was raised to be super independent, like with my mom, like you always have your own, you take care of yourself, and that's who I was my whole life, just getting stuff done. And coming into a marriage, working with the team instead, as opposed to like what you need to do for yourself, was scary sometimes. And it was like, oh my gosh, does he really know what he's doing? Even though he's so smart, he's so good with like just pretty much everything, it was still an ego thing for me, because I've been the ruler of my life to this point, me and God, like, is God gonna talk to him? I don't know, like, and I think that we had a lot of challenges around finances
yeah.
really in the beginning, because that was the one area that I really felt like, okay, God, I can surrender this thing, I can surrender that, I'll move, I don't care, like I'll figure everything out, but finances, no, like that's my thing, like we can't. And so we butted heads a lot in the beginning over this, like what's the best way to attack our debt, or my debt, but then we got married, it's our debt, my student loans and everything. It was really a big challenge, but I think that kind of goes into one of the things that we did well, because we sat there through that. We talked to each other, we figured out a plan, we kept going back and forth. We talked about what the real fears were in what was going on, just having honest conversations, and me having to tell him like, I don't feel like I can trust this, and having him hear like, you don't trust me, like, and I'm like, yeah, but not really, like, you know. But us being able to have those honest conversations allowed us, I think, to come to a place where we were able to get on the same page eventually. And I think that that's one of the things we do really, really well. I think we do get on the same page really well now.
For me, I spoke about agreement. My pastor told me fight for agreement. And that's kind of what put us in the place to really push to be in agreement about every decision we make. And so even if it takes us, 3 months to come to that point, like before we make it, we have to be in agreement.
Right.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yep.
Phil mentioned something that I think is real, like, critical, especially for people that are just entering the season of matrimony, right? Like, I know when we were about to have a kid, my biggest thing was to help prepare her mindset that just because someone experienced a tough pregnancy or, a very challenging one, doesn't mean that she's going to experience that. And I think investing into that mindset, entering into that season, made all the difference in the world. So like Phil is mentioning, he wished he would have known how good a marriage can be. I think that's huge. In feeling that way, thinking that way, and really believing it, and having that be like the starting point. Something that Rosa said before too, like how when she came to Christ, and even when Earl came to Christ, that it still didn't mean everything was perfect. And sometimes that could be the misconception, like, oh, I'm Christian, you're Christian, we're gonna get married, and we should be good. And like, yeah, that it doesn't always work that way. Like, if you don't put in the work to do exactly like Earl and Rosa were saying, like working at this, loving like Jesus loves, forgiving like Jesus forgives. Like, if we don't put in the work to do that, it don't matter, because just because you from the kingdom and she's from the kingdom, don't mean it's gonna be like a marriage made in heaven.
And you know what? What the work that you do in your marriage is literally it's like practice and preparation work to, you're called to die to yourself. And like, that's serious. Like, God takes like faith very seriously. Like, he's like, you have to die. And so, not to say that we're like dying to ourselves, but you have to lay down pride. You have to lay down those things that are really about you, selfish. And one thing that has worked for us is that, I make sure that I'm taking care of Earl's needs, and he's making sure that he's taking care of my needs. That means that our needs are being met in the middle. And so there is nobody left out, because I'm caring for him, he's caring for me.
So for us, that's what we decided to do.
Yeah.
It's heavy though.
No, it's a serious gut check. Like, I hate being wrong, and I needed a real gut check. Like, wait a minute, I'm in the middle of an argument. I know exactly, I know perfectly well, if I say something else, this is gonna blow up.
Right.
But hating to feel like I'm not getting my point across, what do?
Yep.
Like, why? Like, why is being right or making my point more important than helping her de-escalate, helping myself de-escalate? Like, that's a serious gut check. You got to really ask yourself, why is that more important than helping us get to a good place right now?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't say anything.
Yep.
That's love. That's love. That's how, how does love show up? That's love.
That's
You're
it.
like, how badly do I need this win?
Right.
I don't need it. I'd rather her just.
But then if you don't say anything,
Oh, you gotta say something.
don't act like you're out the woods. Because if you don't care, you don't what? You don't hear me talking to you.
So moving on.
I'm sorry. Oh, we're still filming? I'm sorry.
Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. If there's one thing I would love for people to take away, is that all marriages are different, and that we still need the Holy Spirit. And if you can get a good community around you, if you can get some good resources around you, it's only going to help. It's not going to hurt. So get the right people and the right resources around you, and pray. Lots and lots of prayer. But thank you all so much for doing this. And we will see everyone else next month. Until next time, take care.